Yeah, so The Faculty is the most bonkers movie I've seen in a long time. But to be fair, I would expect nothing less from a late 90s movie about a high school alien invasion where alien parasites plot to take over the Earth. I've seen it described as Invasion of the Body Snatchers meets The Breakfast Club with a self-aware 90s spin on it, which sounds like a fair way to put it, even though I haven't seen Body Snatchers. You got The Offspring on the soundtrack, a lifetime supply of baggy jeans, t-shirts over long sleeves, and most importantly, social outcast characters in a time when being misunderstood was still cool, and who would express their teen angst by fighting teachers possessed by aliens. In many ways, it's a coming-of-age tale that just happens to be told in the form of a sci-fi horror movie, and part of the appeal is that it's written by the same guy who wrote Scream, Kevin Williamson. See, after Scream came out in 1996, the slasher genre made a huge comeback, and it's almost all thanks to this dude. Slasher movies and teen horror in general was now the new big thing, and all the big studios at the time wanted to hop on the bandwagon and recapture what made Scream so successful. Witty self-aware dialogue, quirky teen characters, and stabbings left, right, and center was all part of the Kevin Williamson Krabby Patty secret formula that makes up a lot of the movies around this time. Scream 2, I Know What You Did Last Summer, and of course The Faculty were all written by Kevin Williamson in the space of like 2 years. However, The Faculty kind of goes into a category of its own because it was one of the first movies of that time to add a sci-fi twist on teen horror. It was basically Dimension Films' attempt to milk the shit out of Kevin and make what was supposed to be a sci-fi equivalent of Scream. So they hired him to rewrite a script originally written by 2 other dudes to give it that Kevin Williamson magic touch, and when it came to choosing a director, they of course chose...
Please welcome the extremely talented Robert Rodriguez. Robert!
Yeah, actually, never mind. Video's cancelled, guys. I don't want to do this anymore. Now, Big Man Rob is a very hit or miss kind of filmmaker, but I can admit that he knows how to make a fun movie. That guy knows how to make a fun movie when he wants to.
He ruined my dream journal! I did not! Mr. Electric, send him to the principal's office and have him expelled!
And no matter what he makes, his passion always comes through and makes for an entertaining movie some way or another. And so from the perspective of the studio, when you put an alien invasion script from Kevin Williamson in the hands of someone as wacky as Robert Rodriguez, it's literally confirmed to be a hit because in the peak of teen horror, something like that was going to dominate the box office. But unfortunately for Dimension Films and everyone involved, The Faculty made nowhere near the numbers that Scream did on practically the same budget and had almost no one talking about it when it came out. A lot of that had to do with its marketing and the fact that they did shit all to market this movie as the strange sci-fi movie that it is.
Bobby Jeans, make a scene.
So unfortunately, those who went and saw it had false expectations of what the movie was going to be and just didn't like what they got instead. But even though it's a strange movie, it still somehow manages to tell a somewhat clever story without taking itself too seriously, and I love that about it. On one hand, the movie is nothing more than a popcorn flick, but when you dig a little deeper, you can see that it might have a bit more to it than just mindless fun. And while it is considered a cult classic nowadays, I'm still surprised that this movie is still relatively underappreciated, or otherwise underknown by a lot of people. So without further ado, let's get into the movie and why it deserved more than it got. So The Faculty follows a group of kids who are literally straight out of The Breakfast Club. You got the drug dealer, the jock, the nerd, the popular girl, the weird girl, and in this movie you've also got the new girl. And these characters are forced to work together because they make a certain discovery regarding aliens taking over their school. And not only are these characters super likable, but the movie really depends on their archetypes to carry the story and also its themes, which I'll get to later. Josh Hartnett's character Zeke, for example, is not only my favorite character, and it's very unfair that I'll never get to be as cool as he is.
Trust me, man. I'm brilliant.
But the fact that he plays the rebel drug dealer is probably one of the biggest things that drives the story forward. He comes off as a bit of a dropkick because he's repeating his senior year and has no one looking after him at home, but at the same time his contradicting trait is that he's fairly intelligent and really the smartest one in the movie. But possibly the most important thing about his character is that he's invented some kind of drug that he sells in pens, which they later discover is a weakness for the aliens and possibly the only thing that's going to save them. All the teen characters in this movie are outsiders in their own way, and each of them for the most part are dealing with something unique to them, which underneath all the sci-fi and aliens reminds me how much school sucks ass. I would be remiss to not mention Elijah Wood as Casey. Mr. Frodo is the bullied kid without any real friends and who just happens to be the first one to really suspect that something weird is going on. He's He's definitely the biggest outsider in the movie, or at least the one we sympathize with the most in this regard, and unfortunately for him, nothing goes right for a long time because of the powerless kid that he is. The teachers, for example, stitch him up and make him look like a dickhead in front of his parents when he tries to expose them to the cops. To be fair, I don't know what he expected in that scene anyway. But on top of that, everyone laughs at him when he proposes that aliens are taking over the school. His parents think he's crazy, and his dad even thinks his son's on drugs and takes away his right to do literally anything.
Sorry, pal. No more flogging the bishop.
That's got to be the best line in the whole movie. But eventually he proves to be a hero despite being a nobody at first, and this brings me to something that the movie does very well. All of the teen characters seem like stock characters at first glance, but a lot of them have some kind of contradiction that fleshes them out and breaks them away from what we as the audience expect of them. The best example would be Stan the Jock, who's going through an identity crisis. Everyone knows him as a popular football player, but he decides he wants to quit the team and focus on his studies, which is obviously cringe in the eyes of everyone around him. And there's also Stokely, who actually turns out to be an outsider by conscious choice, pretending to be lesbian even though she's straight, just so people alienate her because she doesn't like talking to people. To touch on the others who aren't as interesting, there's Mary Beth, who's new to the town, so automatically no one likes her. And there's Delilah, the popular girl who belongs in hell. Seriously, there's nothing redeeming about her, she sucks. But all these characters from different circumstances who have to put aside their differences to save the world is genuinely fun, even if it's not a groundbreaking concept. In literally the first scene these characters end up together, the movie makes them murder a teacher. That's incredible.
Mr. Furlong, Casey here, he thinks you're an alien.
This is usually the point where somebody says, let's get the fuck out of here.
Let's get the fuck out of here.
So how it works is these little alien slug parasites can infect whoever they want and hijack a human body to use as a host. Once a human gets infected, the parasite can multiply and spread to other humans, and eventually the whole world can get taken over, I think. But becoming a host to the alien also means that the human will lose all control of themselves and their personality. Robert Patrick's character, for example, is the first one to get infected, and he goes from angry football coach to eerily nice and mild-mannered.
Thanks for not reading me, Coach.
What kind of human being would I be if I did that?
And soon enough, the parasite spreads to all the teachers in the school, who all put on the same nice teacher facade. We got Robert Patrick, Jon Stewart, Salma Hayek, Famke Janssen, and that woman from Jumanji, who all turn into demonic creeps. And from the perspective of the students, it's a little hard to pick because half the time they can't tell if the teachers are being their normal weird selves or if they actually are possessed by something. They're very unpredictable, and you never know when or how they're gonna strike. I personally love the scene where they just rock up outside Casey's house and death stare him.
What the hell do you think you're doing?
Dad, they're here.
Well, this sucks.
But possibly the best scene in the entire movie is when they all discover that Zeke's drug that he sells is a weakness for the aliens that dehydrates them and kills them. Not only that, but they also somehow work out that there must be a queen alien who provides the life for all the parasites, and if they can destroy the queen, then they can destroy all of them. And I have no idea how this works, but before they can even do anything with that information, they realize that anyone in the room could be an alien, and that the only way to prove that they're not an alien is to get high as fuck.
Stokely?
I'm not putting that hack drug up my nose. It's so 80s.
Aliens are taking over the Earth. Wait.
This is actually an homage to that blood test scene in The Thing, where they all have to prove that they're not the Thing, but in this movie they all end up getting high and laughing at everything, which is a clever way of subverting how tense this would normally be in a horror movie, because it's funny. Check out Frodo over here. He doesn't know what planet he's on.
Showdown.
Eventually, they discovered that Delilah is the imposter, meaning she's the first teen to succumb to the parasite, which is fine because her character sucks anyway. And once she presents herself as an alien, they all aggressively debate on whether or not to kill her. But she gets away and leaves them with no choice but to chase her to the school and put an end to it once and for all, by locating and killing the queen alien. Which of course brings up the risk of also becoming an alien, which many of them do. I'll spare most of the details of this part, but there is no way I can skip over this line right here.
Sniff it.
Out of your fucking mind.
I'm not taking any chances. I leave for 5 minutes, I come back and everyone's a fucking alien.
Fuck, I love this movie. But obviously, in the grand finale, Casey ends up facing off with the Queen Alien, which I have to say is genuinely convincing for 1998. And being the unlikely hero, but now confirmed absolute Chad, my man kills it like a champ.
Guaranteed to jack you up.
A month later, everything goes back to normal, Casey is hailed a hero, and everyone lives happily ever after. Get your hands off my Frodo. It could be dismissed as cliche because almost every character gets a happy ending, but there is apparently more to it than meets the eye, which in a lot of ways makes the movie better than I already thought it was. After watching it, I did a bit of research and honestly I didn't think that deeply about the movie when I watched it, and whether or not this is all valid is another question, but it turns out that underneath all the slime and guts and whatnot, the movie not only deals with themes like alienation, but it's also something of a commentary on the way school life forces kids in many ways, whether it be through school social hierarchy or the education system, to assimilate and become a normal member of society. Because here's how I understand it. Each teen character in this movie is to some degree an outsider, and their position in the social world of high school is threatened by an alien hijacking their identity and what makes them so unique. The parasite could then be a symbol for simply growing up, especially because the adults are the first people to get infected, and it's the youth who refuse to accept the parasite and want to destroy it. And an illegal drug being the only weapon that will save the world is not only an obvious dig at the anti-drug message in the education system, but also suggests that following the rules is overrated because if you do that, you're just going to become like everyone else, mindlessly conforming to what's expected of you and losing what makes you, you. So by defeating the aliens in the end, the teens were actually able to conquer their fear of growing up, and could now confidently move on to the next stage of their lives while staying true to themselves. Man, this video took a really cringy turn, eh? Now I know there's actually analyzing a movie and then there's making shit up to make your high school English teacher proud, so one could say that all of the above is just made up BS and that would be fair enough. But personally, I don't think those ideas are pushing it too far, all things considered, and I can say that after considering those ideas about it, I just like the movie even more now. And however you choose to interpret the movie, what you get is a fun movie either way. It's not perfect, and half the time I can't even tell if I'm laughing at the movie or laughing with the movie, but God knows it's a great time and I thoroughly enjoyed it. But that's about it for this one. Thank you for watching the video, and please do like the video and subscribe and all that stuff if you haven't. Let me know your thoughts on this movie if you've seen it, or drop any suggestions for videos if you liked this and want to see another one like it. Yeah, and I'll see you in the next one.
You peaked in high school, motherfucker.